out of the clouds. And City Pulse is going to show you this thing in ways you've never seen it before. The New York City of the past has evolved and changed right now. I'm going to take you through just a few of the many stories New York City has to offer. And in the hour of the day, by dynamically navigating through its great corner. But first, I think it's important to get our bearings, figure out where we are. And right now, we're in a pretty cool place. We are on the southern tip of Manhattan. We're facing south. But here's a little tip for you. Most New Yorkers usually would not say that. We more typically say that we're on the downtown end of Manhattan facing downtown. And this is because uptown and downtown are directions in Manhattan. That can be important to know. For instance, we do not have northbound or southbound subway trains. Now, uptown and downtown ones. And that's how we're legal down there, so it can be good to know the lingo. However you say it, it's a great place to be. We have New York Harbor stretching out behind me in all its glory. And the East River on this side. We have the Hudson on the other, and right between the two, here we are on the island of Manhattan. Probably the coolest island there is. But here's something I have noticed about Manhattan. A lot of people will get it in their heads that that's all there is to New York City, right? It's that little sliver of an island we call Manhattan, and that is not the case. No, we have 5 boroughs here in New York City. Manhattan is just one. On the other side of the harbor is another one that was called Staten Island. I think that's the one people forget about the most, and probably no small part because the fewest people live out there. The opposite of that is right on the other side of the eastern, that's Brooklyn. That's where the most people live. I should say the borough that has the most people living in there, right? If you broke that up, the 3rd largest city in the United States of America. Then you have Queens wrapping around there, and that's a really big borough, right? That's where we put all really big things like our airports. Both of them are out there. And then if you keep going way uptown past the Harlem River, you get to the best borough, right? You get to my borough. You get to the Bronx. Simply Borough is closely attached to the mainland of the United States. Now, some of you might have noticed I have gone through all 5 of my boroughs, yet I haven't mentioned anything over here on the other side of the Hudson River. That is because that is not part of the city. In fact, that's not even part of the state. That is New Jersey out there. And let me tell you, New Jersey is also a very beautiful place. In fact, a ton of people find some lives out there that choose to live there and then commute to and from New York City each and every single day for work. And because all those commuters, just to make it a bit more confusing, some people have even started to call that the 6th borough, which is a little silly, but kind of fun. Now, all throughout this area I've been talking about, we have all sorts of amazing stories we can tell and things we can explore in a bit further detail. We've broken up into these 10 categories, and I'm going to let you choose which category I will be talking about. And I can talk about anything you like, from getting around town, the New York City history, or maybe you're more interested in urban villages, case in the city or urban parks. So what do you say any of these topics? So let's go shout them out, whatever you like. Any ideas? Out of town, that's a good one, because New York City is a great city to paint red, right? We always have something happening when you're out on the town in New York City. Whether you're going uptown to see a nice jazz club in Harlem, or you're someone across the street, a museum like this, where you're going to see an independent theater show in Greenwich Village, which is kind of great, and always kind of fun. We have a lot of great things to do when we're out in the town of New York City. But I always like to start with, what if you want the fancy option? What do you want to dress to the nines, go out and see something phenomenal? As far as performing arts go, I suggest the Lincoln Center, right? The Lincoln Center, I always think of as the hub of the performing arts here in New York City. And we do have people come from all over the world to strut their stuff on the stages of Lincoln Center. And I always think of, when I think of stages of New York City, I always think of the big ones in Lincoln Center, like David Geffen Hall here. Very beautiful, for nice big orchestral performances. However, Lincoln Center is a collection of stages. There are 40 stages all throughout the Lincoln Center, right? And some of them are the big ones, like Geffen Hall here, or the Metropolitan Opera House. We have some tiny ones sprinkled all throughout that campus as well. And some of them are really good for intimate performances that would be lost on the big stage. The first time I saw a performance on one of these small stages, it was a Baroque violin and harpsichord duet. It was kind of random, kind of weird, but it was something that would be lost on the bigger stages. We also have great spaces for like a jazz quartet, something small like that, or a small choral performance. You have a lot of small spaces as well as the really big ones, right? But the big ones are the ones made for us. And as I mentioned, we do have performing arts groups come from all over the world to perform on these stages. And since there are 40 of them, there is always going to be something going on. There's always going to be a show somewhere in Lincoln Center every single night in one of the stages or the other. We also, as well as having those traveling performers come from all over the world, we also have our resident performance groups here at the Lincoln Center. There's 3 big performing arts groups that make a permanent home at the Lincoln Center. The Metropolitan Opera, the New York City Philharmonic, and the New York City Ballet, right? Now, one thing to also keep in mind, in addition to those performing arts permanent residents in Lincoln Center, we also have a school there, the Juilliard School for the Performing Arts. So you might have heard of Juilliard before because it has really helped hone the crafts of a lot of really amazing contributors to the arts, people like Yo-Yo Ma, Audra McDonald, Miles Davis, John Williams, even Robin Williams went to Juilliard to hone their craft, which I think is pretty fun. But what about if you're not so much into like classical music, fancy, you want to do something, you want to see a rock and roll concert? What's a good place I want to check to see if there's a good rock and roll concert? I suggest Madison Square Garden, right? Madison Square Garden is really a legendary rock and roll venue. Now, if you're a sports fan, you might have also heard of Madison Square Garden. We have the Knicks or Knickerbockers played there, as well as the Rangers and the Liberty, right? So 3 professional sports organizations make their home. And in addition to that, we have a lot of sport events that are one-off events like big boxing matches and annual events like the Westminster Dog Show happen there too. But when there's not a sporting event going on, there's usually a rock and roll concert, right? And that's why I like Madison Square Garden. I'm not a sports fan, but I have been to Madison Square Garden a few times. And some of those legendary names in rock and roll have strutted their stuff on the stage here at Madison Square Garden. Now, I'm not going to go through a list because I'd be here all day into the morning, but I have to mention one name. That name is Billy Joel, right? Because Billy Joel has become the resident performer at Madison Square Garden. He has dedicated himself to perform once a month until he can't sell any more tickets. Now, he had to take a pause with that from the pandemic, but he's certainly back in full force. And if you know anything about Billy Joel's fans, you'll know he's going to be selling tickets for a very long time to come. Okay? And that's pretty impressive to have that kind of fan base that you can just do a rock concert in such a beautiful and big venue every year. Right? Now, there are other rock and roll concerts before. Relatively recently, just less than a decade ago, the Madison Square Garden was the only thing in town for a big arena event. If you were a rock and roll concert and you didn't want to go to Madison Square Garden, the only other option was Radio City Music Hall, which is only 6,000 seats as opposed to the I think 11,000 seats at Madison Square Garden. But now we have Barclays Center over there in Brooklyn. Barclays Center is also a big sporting venue for the Islanders and the Nets there, but it's also a great rock and roll venue. So that was a little bit of competition. And some people have taken that competition seriously and just gone to Barclays Center. They came here. Lady Gaga, last time she came here on an arena tour, she actually did a show at Barclays Center and not Madison Square Garden. Now, other performers will do both. Elton John, last time he was here, he did both. He did both the Madison Square Garden show and a Barclays Center show. So it's a little bit of competition, but there's a lot of really great venues for really big rock concerts here in New York City, which I do love. So no matter what your taste is, if it's a little bit of classical music or a little bit of rock and roll, and I do love both, there's going to be something in town for you in New York City. And I always recommend seeing a live show of some sort while you're here, whether it's a Broadway show or a concert, or just going to a bar with a stage in the back where someone's drumming away and playing whatever they can play. Live entertainment is one of those things we're justifiably well known for here in New York City. But things are always on the move in New York City. You try to keep up to date with what is new and happening, and you can do that with Instagram and Twitter and other modern social media, or you can go back to the original social media and just talk to people. We have a lot of those here in New York City. About 8.5 million people make their lives in this town. We have a diversity as well that's unique in the world, and I think it's easy to see from way up here that it is the passion and energy these people bring to their day-to-day lives in New York City. It's an exciting and vibrant place to live. It's no wonder we're known as the city that never stops. And up here, well, if you weren't already a New Yorker